Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul LaFavor. I'm here with my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn. Today is Friday, the 14th of October, 2022, and I'm loving the cool weather. I hope you are as well. We were spending some time thinking about what to do for our next podcast, and funny thing is we used a lot of time to do it, and so my idea was to have a podcast that was dedicated to the use of time or time management. And so the first question is, will a podcast devoted to time management be a good use of your time?
Well, we know we only have 1 hour to discuss it, so.
I think it would be, I think this is a good use of our time.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is extremely busy today, at least most people are if you have a family, and lots of things going on like most people do.
Absolutely. Buzzing stuff.
Oh, goodness.
Phones.
So, and it's really easy to be distracted because, you got that smartphone. It used to be, you didn't walk around with a telephone.
Yeah, so those were the days.
Those were the days. And I remember
freedom.
It's like, hey, man, we got this thing called a beeper. And people hated those.
Yeah.
Man, wouldn't you like to go back to a beeper now?
Yeah, I remember wearing that pager back in the late 90s.
So it's like crazy because you can be in the middle of doing something extremely important that needs to get done, and your phone is just going, crazy because everybody and their brother's uncle is needing to get up with you
for calls
for whatever. Hey, you want to sell your house or your auto warranty is expired, or any number of just ridiculous
your car's extended warranty
distractions
Somebody
that you
needs
get.
To get with you about
and then
that,
of course it's so easy, especially I see these young people. I mean, and my wife is guilty for it as well. But you get on some of these things like TikTok, and it just seems like it's these, video after video after video. I mean, I don't use that platform. I'm sure it's great and everything, but I look at people that are on it, and it just seems like confusion and chaos to me. But the bottom line is there's just a lot of things that can distract us from doing the things that we probably would be a better use of our time. So we're going to discuss that today.
Absolutely. I mean, I have that first, as you were talking, and I know I should have been concentrating on what you were saying, but that old song by Jim Croce, Time in a Bottle.
Yeah.
If I could put time in a bottle, we can't. And life is complicated. It's full of responsibilities and opportunities. And then, like you said, throughout the day, there's any myriad of things that are competing for our time. So time management, I think, is something we all need to master. I mean, isn't that the saying? If we don't master time, we don't manage time, it's going to manage us.
Oh, absolutely.
So time management is, to think that through, I think is going to be a good use of our time. Now, I thought about this because obviously this is something that I want to be better at. I mean, it's funny how we develop these topics for the podcast. And the reason why these topics come up is because, some things are happening in the world and we want to talk about those. And but I think prioritizing your time is really important. And that's why, this kind of flowed to the top.
Yeah, you and I were having a conversation one time about, like, if you ask somebody, like, what's the most important, aspect of their life, what do you consider the most important thing? I mean, I remember your reply, and it was time.
Yeah.
You ask different people, and they'll tell you different things, but yours was time. And, of course, anybody that knows you knows that you got, about 10 different fires going at any given time. So, you're constantly running from this to that to that to this. So, yeah, I could see where that's extremely important to you, because if you ain't got some kind of mastery or some kind of handle on that, you can forget it. Something's going to fall through.
Yeah, and I mean that's. I think I know that about myself too. I think that's really important for all of us to kind of know your strengths and your weaknesses. But I think, look, from what I've read in history and theology, I think so many people say so many important things about time. I mean, that's just kind of it's an oxymoronic thing to say that time is important. But so Napoleon once said that space we can recover, time never. And I think what he's saying there, of course, is he can regain terrain, right? Like the Battle of Marengo. He lost, he said, the Battle of Marengo in the morning, but he gained it back in the afternoon against the Austrians in northern Italy. That's true, but you can't gain time back. Once time's gone, it's gone, and it's under the bridge. It's the sand is down at the bottom of the dial there. But and something that helped me this week. Last week I read this book. It's by Greg McCowan. It's called Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And some of you might have heard that book before. It's been around a little while. I think it came out in 2014. But yeah, it's about 200 pages. But the whole idea that he discusses in his book, Essentialism, is how to eliminate the non-essentials. So something I got out of that was, how to take some of these principles and then put them towards the use of time, right? And so I think we've kind of got the ball rolling here. I want to be bold here and suggest 4 principles for the wise use of our time. Okay?
Yeah, kind of an easy way to remember how to manage.
Yeah.
How to manage your time.
So I like acronyms. Acronyms are good. I'm a product of my environment, 20-year Army. And, the acronyms that I was taught in the Army helped me to do things.
Got an acronym for everything.
Absolutely. So, MET-TC, MET-TC dependent. Yeah, that's a great.
Loose muss.
But I have a 4-letter acronym. It's PART, PART. Okay, so here you go. So it's prioritize, adjust, reserve, and time box. Okay, so as it is with some acronyms, you want to make it also. What's the word I'm looking for? And this is what happens when you get old and you become like the president. You start forgetting stuff. The word will come to me, but it's the word.
The case of Bidenism.
Yeah, but the acronym is actually also a real word. So I'll come around and remember that. But prioritize. So you prioritize tasks and define your goals. This is kind of goes without saying. When you look at, because we're men, we're adults, we want to look at our week. So the first thing that I do, and you may know me, those of you do, is, and know those of us like me, is I like to use a personal calendar, a notebook, a personal calendar. I like to use, like a little bit of a journal. And so this is something I put on my nightstand. This is something I take with me. In fact, it's really my brain on paper. But what I do is I've got the week at a glance. I've got the month. I've got the year. I even have things that go 5 years out. I got a 5-year plan for certain things. It's kind of weird. But I think the idea, the premise here I want to establish is you want to look at the tasks at hand and to prioritize those, or really to use Greg McGowan's premise, is to find out what's essential. Find out what is the essential so you can eliminate the non-essentials and concentrate your time effectively on the things that really matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do this. I mean, I know my family does it. We'll use a piece of paper or a whiteboard or something and start jotting down all the various different tasks that we have to accomplish, short-term, long-term.
Yeah.
And then going ahead and prioritizing those things. So once you get your list developed, because most of us maintain a pretty long list all the time. I mean, as you knock something out, there's always something else that gets added to the list, right? So seems like there's always a to-do list, if you will, of things that families have to do. And but it's important to, at least for me, I'm a visual guy, so I like to see things. So that helps me. Most people can just do this probably without doing that, but I like to write things down because that way I can kind of like, okay, this needs to be on top, for whatever reason. And that's usually a conversation I have with my better half. And we'll sit there and look at that list and because she'll have some input and things that I don't realize about importance of some of the tasks. So that's always helped me. And that I think that plays right into what you're talking about, just constantly prioritizing and figuring out what it is that you need to be working or focusing on at that moment.
Absolutely.
And figuring out the best time to do it.
Yeah, I find that when I'm just get a clean piece of paper. I mean, it's like one of the most beautiful things in the world. I know it's kind of weird, is a clean piece of paper. All the possibilities that could go onto that paper. But you just kind of, word salad, if you will, that piece of paper. And then, you number something that's a 1, and then later on, that's, you go back and go, that's not exactly a 1. But I find also when I've jotted everything down on paper that I look at the big picture, and I remember what the goal is, and that's important too. It's like, hey, what am I doing this for? This, we say in the Army, to use it as an example, is the purpose of this operation is this. It shows the why we're doing something. Why are you doing this? Right. And so this is, and also reminds us our big goal. And I think, there's so many time thieves that would preclude us from doing stuff like this. This is why this is such a good use of your time, is because people will procrastinate. They'll say, I'll do that. I'll think about what I need to do Saturday or something, and I don't have these options to do that. But this is what this principle does: is it circumvents the procrastination, and it forces you to kind of put everything down that's essential, and then you sort through it.
Yeah,
that's the idea.
I think if we write down everything we do during the day, we may be surprised on how many non-essential tasks that we're performing that are really not important at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, a conversation with your neighbor. Okay, that could be extremely important. Okay. But I'm sure all of us are, doing things during the day that are probably not the best use of our time. Now, if you have the time to do that, fine. But most of us don't have the luxury of having a lot of leisure time.
Yeah. Now, something, we have less leisure time. I think when I get older, now that I'm 50, I realize I have less time for things. I mean, because statistically, if I die at 72, I'm already over the hump. I mean, that's a little morbid.
Yeah, I don't. But, I think when I was younger, I had a whole different idea of
the aperture's wide open.
Well, I mean, I just take the term retirement for instance. Yeah. Okay, I mean, you could say I'm semi-retired. I've never been busier. And I think that's probably the truth for a lot of folks that are retired. I think at least the smart ones are probably busier during retirement than they ever were when they were working a 9 to 5. Because that just sucked up your entire life. I mean, everything was focused around whatever that job was that you had, that W-2 chore that you did. You woke up every morning, you had the same old routine Monday to Friday or whatever. But now that you don't have that thing is removed from your life, then you've got everything else that you're involved in, and it can be extremely busy. I think you and I are much busier in our 50s than we ever were in our 30s.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, I don't know, but I know I am.
And I've something I got out of Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, is just very simple: learning to say no. Learning to say no, And the idea of learning to say no is saying yes selectively. So just something that, when I read this, he doesn't bring this out, but when I read that portion of his book, because I was thinking about the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey. So if you don't remember, Jim Carrey is the character Carl. He's a bank loan officer.
That's right.
He has a negative outlook on life, and he's coaxed to this motivational seminar that encourages people to say yes, 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 to be a yes man. And so, initially this pays dividends for Jim Carrey, for Carl, and he has all these misadventures. But really, at the end of it, he does meet the love of his life and all these other good things. But he learns, he has to learn a better way to say yes, to say no sometimes.
Yeah, he has to find that balance, right?
Yeah, he finds the balance. And so to say, the idea is you can't say yes to everything because it monopolizes your time. You're juggling life. You're running to the rat race. You have no focus. And then, of course, we're not even talking about money here. We're not even talking about finances.
You bring up a good point, because I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people have a hard time with no.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like it's just so mean.
Why could you tell me no?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems mean. It seems selfish. It seems.
How dare you?
I think there's a lot of negative connotations, obviously, with the word no. I mean, that's kind of funny in itself, but I think you do. I think people do need to learn how to do that in a, I don't know, a polite way.
Yeah.
In an earnest way where they don't feel bad about it, but there's actually.
No.
Yeah. But I've never had that problem. But I know people that
it's
do.
It's a personality driven thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But
some people are more comfortable saying no, and that's true.
Yeah. But there's some people that have a hard time saying that.
That's true. Some people have a hard time saying no because they don't want to, disappoint their friends. And but something that's akin to this is really the art of negotiation. And negotiators, they use the terminology of getting no is not a bad word. And so you can use terms like forms of expression like, is it a waste of time for us to do this? And then so the answer you want is no. And that makes a no good. And so that's the idea. But I think it's important I know that I need to say no selectively. I need to say yes selectively. And so something that any type of discussion like this reminds me of is sometimes I need to say no. I need to say no to things that would gobble up a lot of time, and maybe a qualified no. Sometimes that's good too. Maybe give your friend, hey, no, and it's because I got, something else I committed to. And I think when you say that, it does two things. Obviously, it reminds your friend that, you're not just a snob and you're, socially defunct, but you have commitments. Yeah. And they'll end up honoring that. So I think that's kind of important. So I think what I'm saying is maybe qualify the no, with people that you need to qualify with.
Because this is important, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to prioritize anything unless you can say no.
That's true. And then the idea is also when you prioritize your tasks, you're taking that, higher view of what's going on with your life. So you're taking stock of your life, taking stock of the situation.
Well, you mentioned something earlier about your 5-year plan. And of course, it sounded very Marxist of you, but what you're saying is you're not losing sight of your long-term goals. Where you're going as a person, where you're going as a family. So you want to make sure that you're heading down the path that's going to get you there. Yeah. If you're distracted doing a bunch of million things that are not going to get you there, they're actually going to keep you from ever achieving that long-term goal. Then you're just running in place.
Yeah. So that's another terminology you can borrow from the Army, but the military is you have a nested interest. You look at, hey, is this task, nested with the big goal? Is that going to lead me to that? And so I think, obviously this will apply to any discussion like this. Could be military focused. You're a student, in college, whatever. I mean, I remember going through college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself, let alone doing life. And that could be you, but not everybody has that problem. Some people are more switched on. I just wasn't one of those people. But I think, it's a good use. The whole point of prioritizing is we're judging things. So there's a little bit of not judging. That also has a negative connotation too, right? But we're a little bit of we have to look at the I guess I want to use that word judge. So we're judging things and whether or not these have essential qualities or non-essential qualities. They could be anything we do, from the time you get up to the time you go to sleep. And so that's why I have this second principle is adjust. So you have prioritizing your tasks and defining your goals, but then maybe you start on Monday, Tuesday, you see, hey, that didn't really work, right? And so this reminds you, this is like an OODA loop, if you will,
Yeah, or another thing that comes to mind is life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So, obviously, obviously you have a plan. You've prioritized, you've taken the white sheet of piece of paper like you talked about earlier, but life's going to happen and things are going to pop up and you're going to have to be constantly kind of reevaluating and assessing and adjusting, right? Is that what you're talking about there?
Exactly. So the really is causing us to be, judgmental with, what we just set out. So this is hard for me because I'll fall in love with a plan. I'll do that. I'll make a plan. I like it. I sell it. And then when I see something that's like a chink in the armor, I'll rush to defend that plan instead of having somebody point out the fault. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll do that. And that is, we don't want to do that. So, because we have, history is replete with people that have done that, made the plan and they fight the plan, not the enemy. And then they just have a big train wreck. And so this is a way to avoid the train wreck. And the train wreck here is a little less costly. It's just frittering time, wasting time. And, on this note too, there's certain things that are not a waste of time. There's, of course we talked about spam calls. We've talked about.
Those are the easy ones.
Yeah. But
the more difficult stuff is, a friend in need.
Yeah. So this is where the adjustment would come in, right? This is like life change, your family, you've got a funeral, health issues. And so you just have to be not stringent with this because, life is flexible. And so you want to be flexible with this because, rigid plans, are destroyed by chance events. And so you want to look at this and see if it's practical. That's, something that we tell the students go through the Q courses, don't think like Jason Bourne, right? Think practical. I mean, Jason Bourne couldn't be Jason Bourne. Sorry. Nobody's a Jason Bourne. It doesn't exist.
Makes a cool movie, though.
Yeah, but nobody is that freaking good, okay? Just think practical. Think about, hey, what is this really going to look like on the ground? Because that's what you need, how you need to be planning. And so, when your schedule is jacked, well, then, you could make up time here and there. You can make up for lost time in certain ways.
Yeah, I think the mark of a good manager is not running something free of mistakes. The mark of a good manager is that guy who, when presented with curveballs and crazy things that pop up, how good he's able to adjust and work through that. I've seen people where they just lose their mind because it's like, oh man, it didn't go the way it was planned. Well, it's just not. If you start out realizing it's probably not going to go as planned, and then just be waiting for the strange stuff that pops up, okay, the unplanned events, it's how you manage those things and how you work through those things, I think is a mark of a good manager. So you're kind of talking about that too. And on your time management, one of those things is just, we have a thing called contingency plans. We try to think of as many different, crazy things that could happen and try to plan for them a little bit. But I guess just be ready for your plan to change, be ready for life to happen, and just go with it, roll with it. Don't get upset. There's no point doing that. It's not going to help anything. Keep a clear head and just figure out how to make your adjustment and still, make your hit time, if you will, achieve your goal, regardless of what happens.
Absolutely. Now, I think you raise an important aspect of it, Mike, is not being afraid of adjustment. Because, this is an area where I've had to really learn and be stretched. And I didn't like when you're wrong. Nobody likes to be shown that they're wrong, but look at it a different way. Look at maybe this way is you don't know everything. You never will. And a wise man knows that. And so you are not afraid of adjustments. In fact, adjustments actually, make you sharper or make your schedule better in this sense. And so this highlights kind of a $50 concept that comes from Hegel, a philosophical construct. It's a Hegelian triad of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So if you follow the idea just at the basic level, is you have a thesis, you have, the premise, right? The only thing that prevents the conquest or the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Thesis, right? Antithesis could be, a nuance of that. And then a synthesis is you put it all together. So you have the first thesis. It's like, you found a chink in the armor and you've got an antithesis. And so the idea is, if you just follow this train of thought, is as you focus on what you control, you find, some issues where, hey, that didn't quite work. If I would have kept going with that, it would have been a giant train wreck. And so this was a good adjustment. Right?
Yeah,
good,
they say successful people are those that are not afraid of failure. Because most successful people fail over and over again. And what you're talking about too, I think, is just, how do you become experienced at anything unless you're kind of willing to make mistakes? So really the mistakes, it's sort of a mindset, I guess, of expecting and looking forward to the mistakes. That sounds crazy, but that's really where the experience comes from, because it's the lessons that you learn from the mistakes that are able to refine you and make you a better time manager or whatever it is that you're wanting to do. So forget perfection. It's the control freaks, always want perfection, and they're never very good managers. You're better off just as much as possible kind of being able to sort of be blow in the wind, be a tree, flex with the wind, and accept the crazy things that are occurring, and then getting smarter and smarter and smarter on how you get back on track. And is that because the next time it just makes you that much smarter when you're doing the plan. That's how you get the experience. I mean, that's how I do. I think most people get experience from making mistakes, right?
Yeah. Someone who says they know it all, they obviously haven't ever been an instructor, because you learn a lot when you teach. And then something I thought about on this rubric is, adjustments help us to actually find out what's essential, right? Because something else is now monopolizing events, and that's just rising to the top. It's like, well, that's now something needs to be. I need to concentrate our firepower on that,
Squash it.
Yeah, until this other thing is really not as important all of a sudden. And then, so there's your prioritize, your adjust and reconfigure as needed. But thirdly, this something that I didn't see enough of in Greg McKeown's book, and it's in there, but something I think is a little bit more important is reserve time to think, recreate, and sleep. So you reserve time, you fight for time.
I'm gonna tell you why that's so important, and why you and I think have seen that a lot. And that in a time when we were in the military, we saw commanders fail at this over and over again, where they they were trying to do too much, and they didn't allow that time to rest.
Yeah.
And so, they're not at their sharpest game anymore because they're completely burned out. And it's extremely important that you allocate time to just rest and just reflect and think about where you're at, what you've accomplished, and what still needs to be done. But you have to have that sort of quiet time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Something that Greg McCowan says in his book is there is, in fact, he says, an undisciplined pursuit of more. And so we think if we put in if there were a 36-hour day, we would do it. I know I've had certain days like that, but then you're going to reach what we call tracer burnout or the law of diminishing returns. There's only so much you can do, cognitive ability you have, physical ability you have, emotional ability you have in one day. And once you've reached that point, you're going to just become dangerous and you're going to make mistakes. And I remember that going through shooting schools, and you're running around with your full kit and you're doing CQB and stuff, and you're just dangerous because now you're tired. And of course, your instructors are doing that because they want to show you, hey, see how hard it is to make a decision now, to do X, Y, Z, to discriminate between targets as you're running around and all that. And the whole point that reminded me of the fact that you need sleep. Sleep is, we say you have enough sleep when you're dead. And that's something fun you say when you're going through, an Army service school, but you really do need enough. I mean, come on. You have to have how much sleep do we need?
Well, I hate that. I hate that. Listen, there's people that don't need 8 hours of sleep a night.
Quality sleep. However many hours there are.
Now you need
quality.
Yeah, you absolutely need quality sleep. Okay, but there are people. I think Napoleon was one of them. Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean,
about 3 or 4 hours.
3 or 4 hours was good for him. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure that he probably went into a straight coma during 3 or 4 hours.
Those were 3 or 4 hours of unmolested sleep.
Completely down, rejuvenating. And I think from what I've heard too, Donald Trump's a lot like that too. They say the guy doesn't need a lot of sleep. I think a lot of successful people are like that. Now me, forget that. 3 or 4 hours is not going to be enough for me. But you need to figure out what your needs are and make sure that you account for it.
Yeah, not only that, but you need time to think. So I put this in here, reserve time to think, recreate, and sleep. So I'm thinking this is really not only time for hobbies, that's to recreate, and that's kind of a duh thing, but just time to step back and just kind of take stock of your life, take stock of the situation, as the Stoics would say, at the end of the day, they think back through the day and go, hey, what was done well? What was not done well? And, you can't overthink, and I am probably guilty of that. I overthink pretty much everything. So this is really not my problem, but some people don't unplug, and they can become anxious, depressed, overtaxed.
I've known people that overthink stuff so much that they actually never accomplish anything.
Yeah, the paralysis by analysis. Yeah.
Paralysis by analysis, just constantly, and years later, you're like, dude, why haven't you, fixed up your family room yet? I still haven't decided if I'm doing sheetrock or
waiting for the right time.
Paneling or this and that. And it's just, after years of listening, it's just kind of boring. It's like, dude, just throw something up.
Yeah. And, I'm not saying that. I mean, here's the idea is life should be about balance. Balance is good, and so the idea also is all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. So there needs to be a hobby. My hobby is reading. So the room I'm in right now has tons of books. I like to read. You read to lead. You feed your brain. There's so much to read, so little time, of making many books. There is no end. We could compile the sayings, but reading is really fundamental. Okay, it really is. I stole that one too. Yeah. But, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be reading. It could be walking. It could be, throwing axes. I don't know. The idea is you need a time to just unplug. And then maybe that means leaving your cell back at the house. I think that's something I've started to do. And if you're trying to get a hold of me and, you don't get me for an hour, it's because I've unplugged. I don't have to be on a pager or a beeper anymore. So I'm not America's 911. I'm good. But that's the idea. It's just you think through time it's called time for margin. Now, something else I put in there is I've been married for 27 years, and there's a reason why. The first reason is my wife has a sense of humor, and I have no idea what she saw in me, but I also date my wife. I make margin for my wife. We have time together, and so we pick a day and pick a date night and do that, and just religiously stick with it. And so when that day comes up, she says, hey, if I forget, that's our date night. Well, you better have time set aside for that. And you'll find that this habitually, this will make you a better use of the other time that you have. And because you don't have time to do all the other stupid things you do, instead of just eat and talk about why you wanted to spend the rest of your life with this fine woman, then you're going to be able to think those things through the next time you sit down to do tasks.
Yeah, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but you just made me think of something. And
tangents are fun.
So you have kids.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us parents.
Didn't even mention them. Yeah, that's also important.
Well, but see, I think that's actually what got me thinking, because you didn't mention that. But you mentioned
because they're out of the house now.
Well, no, but here's the point I'm making. I think as parents, we actually probably do a better job of allocating and reserving time for our children than maybe we do our spouse.
Yeah,
and I think it's very easy to put the spouse on the back burner because you're dealing with, whatever issue a child has or children. But I think the biggest gift that you give your child is your relationship with your spouse. So I think that's, just keep that as far as, that's just something I've thought about is, you want to have a great, healthy relationship with your spouse and your significant other. So I like the idea of the date night. I think that's awesome. But it also, you're also modeling for your children. And the best thing you can do for your children is actually have a healthy relationship with your spouse and stay married.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
I'm not saying, don't do anything for the kids and don't spend time with the kids, but don't forget the spouse. I think it's easy to say, well,
easy to do that.
They're minors, they need our attention right now. You're an adult. You can handle it. I don't have time for you right now. I don't think that's the right answer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I would just double down on that and say, one of the most important things that your children need to see is that you respect your wife and that, you've set aside time for that. I think when my kids saw that, they thought, wow, it just shows where your heart is. That's the what the Bible says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then here's the other thing. If I could offer some free advice to the guys out there, when you go on a date with your wife, put your freaking phone away.
Oh my God.
There's nothing worse when I see a guy, and this is really not a gentleman thing to do, is to get the couple, they're sitting at the table, and they're both dorking around with their phones. And I think, what's the reason why you went to this restaurant? Okay, yeah, the food's good, but to also spend quality time. And how are you getting that if your phone's in your hand? I mean, you spend enough time with the freaking phone in your hand already, so put it away.
Yeah, turn it off.
Yeah, just
turn it off. And
what signals that send to your wife that the phone's more important or whatever it is? I got it. If you get a call and it's like your kid's at home, the house is on fire.
Yeah, it's again, it's back to P, right? The priority and prioritizing your time. And if you're on a date with your wife, be on a date with your wife.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, plenty of time to play with the toy.
And you're going to have to fight. The whole idea with this is you have to develop a good habit. I mean, our values reflect, what's the most important thing in our lives. And so you're going to have to, what you value is going to determine how you live. And so if you value this time, then you're going to have to make a habit. And this is, you have to force yourself And I'll tell you, I mean, it's like my phone is attached to me like an umbilical cord, like everybody else. But the other thing I didn't really go through enough is I think reserving time is to keep you from getting exhausted, just burned out in life. Just get burned out. And so it's not just so much a hobby and the time with your loved ones and sleep and time to think, but just, so much time is spent, just we worry about other things so much that we forget, hey, enjoy life too. Just don't be burned out. It's so easy to get burned out in a job, taking your work home with you, and you're always just doing something else instead of just unplug for a little while.
Yeah. So, I mean, what comes to mind, at least for me, when you say that is the fourth commandment. I mean, I think even God recognized that the human body, the human being that he created works best when it works 6 days and rests on the seventh. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think we were designed that way too. I think, take a day off, just, unplug from everything at least one day a week if you can, and revitalize yourself. I think your health and your mental health and everything else will be better for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's one that I have to be working on is, I'm always trying to, because I was in 3rd Special Forces Group, one of our mottos was, 10 pounds of poop in a 5-pound bag. And so we just want to cram, 36 hours of stuff in a 24-hour day. And you just got to avoid that. You're going to burn yourself out. And then, so if you're a leader, you're looking at, the law of diminishing returns, and this is also a call to be practical. I remember on JSETs, we want to do so much, you want to, my family, I don't think they listen to these podcasts, but it would be funny for my wife to hear this, is on a vacation, I would have 5 W's. We'd have a mission statement and a con op for our little vacation. My wife's like, we're going to Florida. We're going to go to the beach or whatever. But the idea is I had this, it had to go a certain way. And if it didn't go that way, then doggone it. And I had every little minute monopolized in that, but you can just get burned out. You just gotta.
Yeah. I mean, I completely can relate to that. And, I think it takes a while post-military retirement to kind of put that in proper perspective. But I think it's so ingrained in us, that 20-year career of, everything that you do is meticulously planned out, and you end up coming home on doing the same thing on a vacation. Cause at least in the military, we used to get, paid vacation, right? Once, so many days every year, and it's precious. So, when you finally have leave, it's a big deal to you. And I think our training tells us to make the most of it. And you end up kind of ruining, you can easily ruin a vacation doing that. Yeah. Instead of just relaxing and having a good time with your family.
Yeah, you forget that, hey, the whole purpose of the vacation is to relax.
Right. Yeah, it ends up being a mission or something like that.
You're on a mission, man. But, okay, so the last principle I have is really kind of putting it together. It's time boxing. So the obvious question is, what is a time box? If in your mind's eye you have time for business or pleasure or whatever it is, blocked, time blocking, time boxing, the concepts are very similar. But what we're looking at is a fixed unit of time dedicated to an activity. And we say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z during that time. And this could be conceptual. Hey, I'm going to work on these, and we're stealing all these things from the military, of course, because the Army teaches you how to plan. And the idea with the time box is, instead of juggling things and overcommitting in certain areas, you go, well, now it's time for this. And then I'm going to only dedicate so much time into that activity. And when I reach the end of the border of that time, well, I need to reevaluate and see if I have enough time, to commit more, or are you going to be behind in other tasks? And so you have, you can think of any myriad of things you'd have to do during the week. And so this is I'm going to use another concept here from Greg McCowan's book, and he uses what he calls a trade-off. And it's just a simple term, a simple idea is trade-offs are where you say, hey, am I willing to trade this for that? And so this is, maybe you have at this point, you've already planned your week, and now something else is being more prioritized than the other. And you say, I'm going to trade, this activity for that one. And then, so that reminds us of, you can regain terrain, but not time. And so that's at the base level, that's trade-offs. And so you make really, this is a negotiation with yourself, if you will, to, use time for one activity or other. And so the question is, what trade-offs am I willing to make to do X, Y, Z? And I think sometimes the answer could be easy, but really what it's asking you to do is be selective. And so you say no to one thing enables you to say yes to other things. And that's the whole principle of trade-offs. And so I could, I had a few examples, but really with let's say with writing. I like to write, and I want to grow as a writer, but I have, different book projects that I'm working on. And so it's a trade-off to, spend more time on one project than the other. And I have to try to foresee, what that end state is going to look like. How much time am I willing to invest in a project to see am I going to get something out of it? And so you're going to be asking those questions when you're looking at your time blocking, time blocking. This is just an investment technique. So what do you think about that, Mike?
Well, I think
so
time
the gears turning.
Well, no, I mean when we looked at this book and essentialism, the things that come to mind weren't time, but obviously I think time is probably the most important aspect of that, because if you don't get your handle on that, you can.
That's where my brain went with it.
Yeah, you can. Well, that's probably, and I can see that, but me, when I looked at this, the disciplined pursuit of less. I mean, I can honestly tell you, I was thinking more materialism and finance and things like that. And you went straight to time on that, and I think that's accurate. Because I think if you don't have a handle on that, the other stuff ain't really going to matter.
Yeah.
But I would like, if possible, I would like to talk about some of the other aspects of Greg's book here. The pursuit of less. What some of the stuff that he covered in this, besides the time, which I'm glad we talked about today.
Yeah, but
I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's really, he uses these basic tools, learning the power of no, prioritizing using time, habits to limit non-essentials, using a personal calendar. His big slogan is less but better. And I think I've taken that because, the idea of a thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and I like less is more.
Less is more. Yeah.
Less is more. And so you decide on what you can say no to, and you stop trying to do everything. And but that's really, if you squeezed out that book, that's really the thesis. And I don't want to go any further without mentioning one of my favorite verses on this, and that's it's out of Psalm 90, verse 12. And we would be remiss without quoting that. But Psalm 90 is a psalm of Moses. It's the only psalm of Moses out of the Psalter of 150 psalms. And, obviously it's not Psalm number one, but the psalms were arranged thematically. But in Psalm 90, verse 12, Moses says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And I love that because it's like time, in one sense, is a passing fire guard in the night, right? It's like a patrol base, if you will, where you get out of the fart sack and you're now on a knee facing out, and it's really cold. Maybe that helps you stay awake. But it's really time in a way is just a changing fire guard in the night. It's gone so quick. You want to depress yourself. Look at how many hours there are in a year, and in 10 years, or even this on my computer. I'm able to pull up the calendar, and it shows the date and the time, and then you can watch the seconds as they pass. And I don't like to look at that very long because it reminds you that you are mortal and you only have a limited amount of time. In fact, Moses goes on to say, that we have 70 years, 80 if we're strong. But that's really the idea is gaining a heart of wisdom it pertains to time. And so the Bible actually says a lot about how to be wise. Wise is doing things that is practical. Knowing how to do something is wise. Knowing when to say something, when not to say something. That all has to do with wisdom. Of course, it also says that wisdom begins with the fear of God. But the idea is that I love from Psalm 90, verse 12, that is so apropos to this podcast is a heart of wisdom really has a lot to do with knowing that your days are numbered and you don't have your hours in the day are numbered and you need to use them wisely. So it's really a call to use your time wisely because really your time, you can't get it back. Time is really money, and I think time is more important than money. That's just me personally. I may not agree, but I can gain money back, but I can't gain time back. And I spend time. So time is like currency. I can spend it, and it pays dividends, to add some more aphorisms. But that word I was looking for earlier is acrostic. And so the acrostic is a word that's actually an acronym that's also a word. And so that's the, I wanted to circle back around as PART, P-A-R-T, prioritize tasks and define your goals, adjust and reconfigure as needed, reserve time to think, recreate and sleep, and then time boxing as a technique for investing your time. But that was pretty much what I wanted to do with the podcast. And I hope that with these tools, it will help you look at the time that you're given for each week and day. And as a parting shot, I think I like this quote from William Penn. He says, "Time is what we want the most, but what we use the worst." And so the idea is to, use our time wisely.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's not just the hours in the day or the days in the week, but the Psalm reminds us that it's your life. Yeah. So you're looking over your calendar for the week. You really you need to be assessing where you're spending your lifetime at and on when you're spending that on. Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So anyway, I think we're getting close to that hour. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander Podcast. And if you enjoy our content, we hope you'll check out our sponsors. Blacksmith Publishing has been serving the Warrior class since 2013. We have great titles written by warriors for warriors. So if you're looking for a great reference book or you just want to unwind in the G-Base with a great novel, be sure to check out the bookstore located at blacksmithpublishing.com. We're always adding new titles. So if you're looking for some cool apparel, go over to pinelander1776.com, and we got a lot of neat things over there. And we appreciate your support. The American Agoge Project, developing tomorrow's warriors today. And until our next meeting, remember to keep your head on a swivel and stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. To each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless Pineland.